Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Japanaholic podcast, a podcast surrounded by topics all about Japan, anime, games, discussed by one certified Japanaholic. I'm your host, Taylor Frey, and today I've kind of gotten an episode where for the next however many minutes the episode is, I can't really predict the future. I really want to discuss several different topics that have came up over the past week. Okay, as you can tell by the video, there's already one topic I definitely want to talk about today, and I'll get to that one soon. And there's also one topic I kind of want to talk about that really doesn't have to do much with either anime or Japan. In fact, it's really just an America thing that's been going on lately. But I still want to talk about it nonetheless because it kind of has to do with money, and I thought about what this kind of situation could do in Japan, because many people know this, but for those who don't, Japan is a very money-based, or actual money, coins and yens and stuff like that. They're not all about the credit cards or the debit cards, unlike here in America where almost everything we do is based on cards, or kind of like Apple Pay, where you just automatically pay through the phone or whatever. But in Japan, it's mostly actual hard money, like yen bills or yen coins. But here in America, we've gotten a coin shortage, a national coin shortage or change shortage. There's two ways you could say it, and they're all the same thing. Because I think I've said this before, I work at a supermarket as a cashier, and I've had to deal with a coin shortage firsthand, for the most part. It's just mostly our self-checkouts now, cannot do cash. And it got me to thinking, I'm not really going to talk about this topic much, but it's just something I want to start off on. It's what would Japan be like with a coin shortage or a change shortage? You would really not be able to pay with much, because most families in Japan really don't have a credit card or a debit card. Most of them don't. Some of them are starting to it's slowly getting up there in terms of being implemented in most families. So probably the next few years, you'll probably see more debit cards being accepted in stores and stuff like that, because many stores, locally owned stores, only take cash and not cards or whatever. And that's kind of the one issue that many foreigners have when actually visiting Japan, is when they visit Japan but they don't have much cash on them, because they don't study up on the fact that, oh yeah, you need cash. You need a lot of cash on you, because cards don't work all the time in Japan. So, but that's just been something that's been going on through America for the past 2 weeks now as of recording this. It's just something I thought about while working one night. I was like, man, this would suck if this happened in Japan, wouldn't it? Well, let me go on ahead, and let me talk about the Please Don't Bully Me Nagatoro series, which just recently got announced that it was going to get an anime adaptation by Telecom Animation Film, the same studio that made Tower of God Spring 2020. First off, let me say that I think it was 2 weeks ago, I said that I don't think the series was ever going to get an adaptation, mainly based off of the fact that its original creator was known for being a lolicon, or not a lolicon, sorry, but who really liked to draw hentai that had to do with lollies. So I kind of figured that this adaptation would never happen. Many people thought the same way as me, but just as soon as I say that, I go on Twitter, because Twitter, I always have my phone on me and I scroll through Twitter a lot. Either my Twitter's filled with a bunch of lewds or anime news, so either or, it's a 50-50. But during that scrolling phase, there was a little announcement or whatever that the newest chapter of the Nagatoro series was going to include a special announcement. And I pretty much knew exactly what the announcement was, because when you see a thing on Twitter that says, "Oh, well, this series that doesn't have an anime adaptation is going to have a special announcement on such and such day," about 90% of the time, it is an anime adaptation. I don't know what the other 10% could be, because mostly I've seen a bunch of like, "Oh, special announcement leads to an anime adaptation." So I kind of figured it was going to happen, but I didn't. At the same time, I can't believe I ate my words just 2 weeks. In just 2 weeks. So I'm happy, dude. I'm excited. The only thing that we're missing right now is the Komi-chan Can't Communicate series. Okay, that's the only one that does not have an anime adaptation yet. And that one, I am pretty sure will get an anime adaptation here in the next few years. It just depends on how popular the series gets. Because Komi-chan Can't Communicate is a really popular series, just as popular as the Nagatoro series. But I'm not entirely sure when the adaptation will come out. I know there will be I'm predicting there will be an announcement made in the next couple of months, hopefully by the end of this year. Hopefully no longer than that, because I probably can't go another year or two without my Komi-chan anime adaptation. And, you know, going to the Nagatoro series anime adaptation wise, telecom animation film, you know, they are relatively like unknown outside of Tower of God, but I have high hopes for this, because there's no way this anime adaptation, in animation-wise, of course, can be bad in a way. You know, if you follow the flow or whatever of the manga, like in terms of like how its art style is, I think in terms of blushing, we're gonna be seeing characters red as a tomato, just as much as we're gonna be seeing it with Kanojo wa Kainishimasu later this season. Summer season, which, by the way, some anime episodes have started airing. I know the monster anime adaptation that I talked about a few weeks ago, that one had its first episode aired. I think it was either today or yesterday, as of recording this. So I'll have to check that out, because I said I would watch it. So I just didn't realize it was airing, you know, early. One of the early bird anime shows that was coming out. I think this week will continue. I think this week will just be a topic discussion of what I found on Twitter, because there was a bunch of good stuff that I found on Twitter that I really just want to talk about. Mainly, there was a tweet here from the K-On! Researcher, famous K-On! Fanatic in Japan, who lives in the Tokyo region. Or I think they live in the Tokyo region. I'm not sure. The reason why I say that is I'll pull up the picture of the screenshot on the video. And I do apologize if I say some Japanese stuff wrong here, because I'm not very fluent in Japanese, as you can tell. But on this tweet, the K-On! Researcher said that they went to the Ikebukuro Toho cinemas in Tokyo, and they had the K-On! Movie listed in the cinemas, and just a part of me looked at this tweet and was surprised, because the fact that the K-On! Movie is still being shown in theaters to this day, you know, it is in Japan, but still, you have the K-On! Movie being shown in theaters, even though that movie came out just 7 years ago. So, like, that's how long ago it was. I think it came out, like, 2013, if I remember. 2013 to 2014. It was a long time ago. But the fact that they're still showing that in cinemas in Japan, especially in the Toho cinemas in Tokyo, like, I know anime is not, you know, a big thing in Japan, you know, compared to, like, other countries or whatever. It's kind of like it has its own little culture in Japan. Many people will talk about this, um, on like YouTube videos or other podcast episodes where, people will say like, oh, anime must be huge in Japan. It must be like what everybody talks about in Japan. I mean, it's very popular in Japan, but it's just as popular in Japan as it is over here in the West, in the United States of America. People do talk about it quite a bit in Japan. I think maybe more in Japan than America, of course. But that doesn't mean like every single Japanese person has seen anime or has watched anime. The point I'm trying to make here is the fact that cinemas in Japan probably won't, like, what I thought, at least, what I thought, is that they wouldn't show many anime movies, outside of their air dates, or like, like the first weekend or so, like the box office weekend, as we call it, where it's, the first week is the big week or whatever. But, and also because of the fact that the K-On! Movie came out in 2013 or 2014. I can't remember exactly. It may have been even old. It may be even older than that. But it's such an old movie that you wouldn't expect it to be in cinemas still to this day. And, credit to the K-On! Researcher. Let me say this as well. Credit to the K-On! Researcher. Whatever gender they may be, he or she. I don't care. Because whoever they are, watching the movie 105 times in many different cinemas, okay? 105 times watching that K-On! Movie. Dude, I finished the K-On! Movie not too long ago. I cried like a bitch. Okay? I'm not going to lie when I say that. Okay? Watching the entire K-On! Series was a roller coaster of emotions. And a lot of people who watch K-On! Will agree with me when I say that K-On! Really brings out the tears, okay? You can say A Silent Voice made you cry. You could say Bunny Girl Senpai movie made you cry. You could say Your Lie in April. For me, K-On! For me, K-On! Okay? Especially in the end of season 2. Whew, that was rough. And the fact that somebody has watched that movie over 100 times now. I know there's probably somebody who's seen it more than the K-On! Researcher. But let me tell you. God, whoever that person is, the K-On! Researcher, prepared for any sad anime. They're prepared for any sad anime. Because I couldn't watch the K-On! Movie 105 times or whatever. And as much as I love K-On!, I just couldn't watch it that many times because I would cry so much by like the 80th time or whatever. By like the 10th time, I'll just be like, stop torturing me. Stop torturing me with this movie. Because we're never gonna get anything more from K-On!, like, ever. I hope I'm wrong. Like, if I was ever gonna be wrong on anything, let me be wrong on this one statement, that we're not going to get anything more from K-On! Okay, mainly because there's a couple other K-On! Spin-offs that I think they're still going on to this day. I think K-On! Shuffle just recently got a chapter. Is either K-On! Shuffle or K-On! College? No, it was Shuffle. They got a chapter updated, but, those spin-off series have probably come and gone already. And we do have K-On! College, which I'm hoping will get adapted, but that's a far-fetched wish for me. I mean, it could happen. I mean, we got the freaking Nagatoro series getting an anime adaptation, when just 2 weeks ago I said it wasn't. It wasn't. God. So, if I'm ever wrong on anything, if I ever want to be wrong on anything, that one statement that I just said, please. Give us more K-On! Just give us more K-On! Okay? But going back to that tweet with the K-On! In the cinemas and stuff like that, it also just surprised me the fact that they kind of showed it in Tokyo, because to me it just kind of feels like Tokyo is just that big city that obviously a lot of people will love to live in terms of people who moved to Japan. Because Tokyo is, I'm trying to think of a place here in the United States where I could compare it to, where people would just love to live at. I think Los Angeles. I want to say Los Angeles, but I really don't know. To be honest, if I were to ever move to a place like a big place in the United States, it would be a huge choice between New York or Los Angeles. I don't know. I can't. Somebody will probably compare it to one of their home countries because I do have a lot of worldwide listeners on this podcast, which I'm happy for. Thanks. If you're listening to this outside of the States. But I'm trying to. I really can't think of it of like in the States, possibly Los Angeles, but like I kind of feel like Tokyo wouldn't be the place to hold a bunch of like weeaboos or weebs in general. Maybe because Akihabara is only a half an hour away, or like just a small little walk. I think I can't remember exactly. I think it was like a 6-hour walk between Tokyo to Akihabara, or like a half an hour drive. I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I looked at like where the cities are placed, but it isn't too far away. Akihabara is not too far away, and the Toho cinemas it's not very far from Akihabara, but still, I mean, it's crazy to think, that still to this day, we're still getting K-On! Movie showings in theaters in Japan. Because I don't know, I think I probably mentioned this already in this podcast, but I kind of feel like Japanese like cinemas would possibly be like our cinemas here in the States, where they would show the more recent movie showings. And then if they ever do get popular outside of their box office week, they'll show them ever so slightly, outside of the first like 3 weeks. But you would rarely see a movie from like here in America, you will rarely find a movie that came out in the 80s or 90s being shown in the theaters, unless there's another movie coming out that is like a sequel or a prequel to the movie itself. Okay? So, and then, anime-wise, in terms of cinemas, here in America, we get them every once in a while. I mean, I was supposed to go to a Made in Abyss movie showing early April. That didn't happen because of COVID. And I'm still waiting for that one to be shown later this year, which they said that they were going to show it off later this year. So once that happens, I'll probably make a podcast episode on that. But it's just, looking at that tweet surprised the hell out of me because of the whole fact that the K-On! Movie has been out for so long, and even though it's like incredibly popular, like a very incredibly popular movie directed by, the same director who made A Silent Voice and just made about a bunch of other crazily, English, good, which is another tweet I want to talk about here in a moment that I tweeted out, because I want to talk about my Twitter page in just a second. But she made, I can't pronounce her name, and I'm sorry if I can't pronounce her name, but she directed the movie A Silent Voice. She's directed a bunch of other good shows and stuff like that. And, honestly, rewatching the K-On! Movie 104 more times for me probably will be on my bucket list here in the next couple years. It is one of my plans, though, or like on my very, really high bucket list, things I want to do before I die, is actually go and watch a Japanese movie in a Japanese cinema. Okay? Not just an anime movie, but just any movie in general, watch it in a Japanese cinema. I really don't have I don't have a soft spot for movies in general, because most of the things that I watch come from either YouTube or one of the many different anime streaming services that I go on, or whatever, like Funimation or Crunchyroll. Not Crunchyroll, VRV, because it's Crunchyroll and High Dev combined together. VRV is definitely a good freaking service, I'll tell you that, even though there's some issues with it every once in a while. But there's that. But going on to, because I said I was going to talk about this over on my Twitter page, there are definitely a few tweets that I wanted to necessarily talk about in terms of what I've been tweeting lately. Anybody who follows my Twitter page knows that I tweeted out 2 specific polls. One of them is pinned to my profile. That's still going on to this day. The other one's done for as of recording this. But the My Anime List websites, everybody knows that website. That's like the big website that many people use to look up stuff in terms of like who voiced this character, or what is this show all about, or who directed this. And you know, it's the place to go for any anime fanatics. Okay, but they never ever had an iPhone app. They used to have an Android app, but they took it off the Play Store. I don't remember how long it was up on the Play Store, but they took it off the Play Store. But they just announced recently that they were going to make an app on the iPhone and for Androids for everybody to use. I posted a poll on here, and you know, since I'm a small YouTuber, and since I'm a small person in general, it didn't get too many votes, or you know, as many as like anybody else would have had, like the Anime Man or Giguk or Connor or Sea-Dog VA, as he's mostly known for, would have done. But I just got enough to, you know, be a little bit confident in talking about this. But I did ask over on my Twitter page that, you know, if I asked people on Twitter which like anime list, quote unquote, they use, okay? Whether they use AniList, My Anime List, or something else. Personally, for me, I use AniList just because it was the thing, it was the most downloaded thing on my phone, or on the iPhone stores, not on my phone, excuse me, but I used it because I thought that would, it helps that whenever I watch an anime on my TV, I can just load it up on my phone and just swipe, and then boom, it's updated just like that. And you know, My Anime List wasn't an app at the time, so I was just like, okay, I'll download it and I'll give it a freaking shot. So I asked people over on Twitter whether they use AniList, My Anime List, or something else. And out of 12 votes, 58% of the 12 votes said My Anime List, and the rest either said AniList or other. And then I posted another poll, which unfortunately, when I made the first poll, I accidentally made it a day-long vote or poll, when I really wanted to like make it a week long, but whatever. The second poll is still going on to this day, so if you want to vote for it, go ahead. But this one was like a follow-up poll for the people who answered AniList or any other websites. If they would switch to the My Anime List app once it came out. And it was a split 50-50 between no and maybe. Personally, for me, I don't think I'll switch to it because it's a stress. It was a stress. Tried to convert all my stuff from AniList over to My Anime List the first time I did it. And it doesn't also help that the AniList website doesn't sync with the phone. So I had to manually, like, look at my phone, like look down at my phone, because you know my desk is pretty small compared to the monitor, but I had to look down at my phone, see what, you know, the score was, and make sure everything was correct on the screen. And if it was, I used a program which downloaded all of the statistics or whatever of each of the anime shows from AniList and converted it over to My Anime List. That was a stress. That took a couple hours for whatever reason. I don't really want to do that again because it has been a few months since I did that. So personally, I don't think I'll switch to My Anime List app, because even though I do have issues with the AniList app for it being like slow and sometimes like janky and not really being good for like looking up animes and stuff like that, or it's just a little janky at times compared to My Anime List. I've just used AniList way longer than I'll use My Anime List. So that was the first poll. I know it was like it was like 2 polls in one, and I said before I was talking about like 2, but they're different topics, 2 different poll topics. The second one, which is pinned in my profile, I asked out of 2 different months, you know, September and October, because those 2 are coming up here relatively soon. We're in the middle of July. All we have to go through is this month and August, and then we'll get to September and October. I asked whether or not, excuse me, I asked which one of the 2 months would be better to visit Japan, whether that be September or October. And still going on to this day, there's 14 votes, and 64% say October, which, in my eyes, is good. Why? Because my birthday's in October, the 15th, almost halfway point of October. My birthday, my B-day. The reason why I bring this topic up and why I made this poll in the first place and chose September and October is because for the past like several weeks now, I've been debating a trip to Japan, or at least a reschedule of it, because I was supposed to be in Japan in June, but due to this whole COVID stuff, I wasn't able to. So I decided to reschedule it for August first off, but then that came, well, no, the end of August into September. But then here comes the whole thing of, I don't even have a passport yet, and due to this whole COVID stuff, I'm not going to get it till the end of August. Maybe the end of July if I'm really freaking lucky. So I just thought, like, should I wait a month, wait a month later to just go in October, because it'll be my birth month. You know, I'll spend my 19th birthday in Japan and, you know, just have more fun in Japan knowing that I just turned 19 in Japan, obviously. Or should I just go in September where, you know, things are cheaper, like plane tickets are cheaper and stuff like that. So I'm more than likely going to be choosing October because of the fact that it's my birth month. But if you have any ideas about, you know, whether you would rather go in September or in October, let me know. You know, whether that's, you know, through an email, my personal email, or through my Twitter page. I don't want to give off my email. I don't know why I said email, but, you know, let me know on my Twitter page at the Japanaholic 1. Let me see. Okay. This has been a half an hour long episode so far. About close to a half an hour. I think that would do it for all the Twitter posts that I've seen lately. There's like a few others that I wanted to talk about, but I can't remember all the tweets off the top of my head. It was just mostly the K-On post and then the polls that I've ran over on Twitter, which, since I am a small person right now, many people probably wouldn't care too much about the topic of like my Twitter polls or whatever. It's just something I thought I would bring up in this podcast episode, where I would discuss what's been going on my Twitter page every once in a while, and so on and so forth. But there is one thing that I've actually posted recently on my YouTube channel that I wanted to talk about more, which is Minimi's new song, Ame wo Matsu. And let me freaking tell you, okay? I'm not gonna really go into much details about like the video side itself on YouTube, because if I did, then I'd probably be going off massive tangents, as I already do many times on my freaking podcast episodes, as you could tell, on several different occasions. But video-wise, that video has probably gotten just... Lately, my YouTube channel has been growing a lot recently, with not only hitting 1,000 subscribers recently, but many of my videos getting over hundreds of views and even hitting 1,000 views every once in a while, which is good. I'm glad that that's happening. And the podcast episodes are doing pretty well. Like, they're pretty in terms of other like contents that I've created in the past. Some do good, some do okay, some do like pretty bleh. But this one will probably end up in the meh category, now that I think about it. But I wanted to talk about Minimi's new song, mainly because of the fact that if you have not listened to Minimi's like discography, yeah, you are missing out on one incredibly talented artist, okay? She only has like 6 songs on her Spotify page. I think in total she has like 7 or 8, because I think there's like 2 songs. I think there's like 1 or 2 songs that they were like singles, but she never uploaded them to Spotify. They're on her YouTube channel, if I remember correctly, like Eternal Blue or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. I could be wrong, but this one is definitely in my top 3 in terms of favorites. I do love Crying for Rain and Lilac. They're up there as well. But Ame wo Matsu is definitely, like, it's got to be either second. It's hard to top Crying for Rain, but it's really close to topping Crying for Rain in terms of my favorite Mini-Me song. If you have not heard that song, good lord, please listen to that song, because it is so freaking good. Okay? It is powerful in many different ways. Okay? And it may have only came out just like last week, but it's like on my on my Spotify playlist. I think I may link that one in the description of the YouTube video, because in case anybody's interested in what kind of music I listen to, I have over 1,000 songs on that Spotify playlist, and the fact that a song that came out just last week ends up being in my top 30, like most listened to songs of like the past few weeks or whatever, that's insane. That's insane. That just shows how much I really enjoyed Mini-Me's music. You know, as much as I can't really listen to it. There's many different comments on there on the actual like music video, where the comments all like, well, how can you understand this? It's all in a language you can't understand. It's like, I may not understand what she's saying, but can understand the power and the feelings that are going into this song, because the song, okay, strikes many different nerves in terms of like how she sings it, and like the music tempo and stuff like that. It just fits so perfectly that I love it. I really freaking love it, and I can't recommend the song enough. And oh my god, please listen to it. Okay, please listen to just every one of her songs in general. So this podcast episode's only half an hour long, and usually my podcast episodes, I usually don't want to go longer than like a half an hour, because as a one-man podcast, I can only do so much for like one sitting or whatever. I don't necessarily, the kind of like this part of the podcast here is where I'll talk about the future episodes or whatever, that I want to have happen on this podcast. I want to keep it one man. I know a lot of people probably get turned off a lot by one man podcast, but I want to keep it a one man podcast just for now, until I end up like getting into like a year and a half into this podcast. But I'll keep it a one man podcast for now, and I'll probably start branching off here shortly soon, depending on what happens. If anybody wants to be a part of the podcast in like late 2020 or early 2021, who knows? We'll see. I'll see. Because like I said, it's a long road ahead of me. However, for the next few weeks of the podcast, I do have some special episodes planned. I don't know if they're ever going to come out or not. It depends. If everything goes right, I'll have the next 3 weeks of podcasts covered, which is a good thing in my opinion, because that means that I'll be able to bring out more content, not only to YouTube, but also on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, literally anywhere podcasts are distributed. Just look forward to the next like 3 or 4 episodes of the podcast. And you know, as a one man, you know, podcast, it's not easy for me to make a podcast episode, make it successful. And I don't really want to talk about like personal stuff, or I don't want to talk about like numbers or anything like that. I mentioned this when I was talking about my mentioning the unhealthy obsession episode not too long ago. But you know, I don't really want to talk about numbers. I don't really want to talk much about, you know, like bragging. I don't want to brag. I don't want to say, oh, I wish my podcast was more popular or whatever, because I'm just not that. I'm not that kind of person. I don't think anybody should really be that kind of person when they're making a product, when they're making a podcast or videos or content or whatever. So, yeah, that's just my opinion, and everybody's different. So there's that. And I am sorry if I do sound a little sick, because air conditioning in this house really brings out the worst in the allergies, and that's how it's been for the past like several weeks here in this horrible, humid 90-degree freaking weather, or 30 degrees Celsius if we're talking actual numbers. But 30 degrees Celsius here in freaking America, it's super hot. I don't like it. Okay? I don't like the humid weather, especially driving in a truck that doesn't have air conditioning. It's the worst. It's the worst. All right. So I think I'm going to call it for this episode of the podcast. Just, you know, if you really enjoy this podcast and stuff like that, want to see it, you know, continue on, just show support and just let me know that I'm not wasting my time recording and editing these, because it's a little tough getting a name out there on YouTube nowadays, especially doing podcasts. So, you know, show your support, you know, by hitting the like button, follow button, subscribe button, you know, share this episode out, share the whole podcast out with fellow anime weeaboos or whatever, just whoever you may think would like a podcast all about Japan, anime, and games. So, thank y'all so much for watching this episode of the Japanaholic podcast. Tune in next week where I will do this all over again. But for now, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. I've been Taylor Frey, the certified Japanaholic, signing off. Good night, America, or wherever you may be watching.